Our next speaker is Andrea Maier, who is the co-director of the Centre for Healthy Longevity, Healthy Aging, I think it is, in Singapore, and I'm delighted to bring her to the stage.
Thank you, Aubrey. Yes, you can hear me. That's great. And thank you, Martin, for this great conference. Always good to be in Dublin. I love the Guinness at the end of the day. Not at the start, but at the end. I'm very bad with jokes, so don't accept anything. I start with this nice photograph. What I'm trying to achieve, oh yeah, you see it. What I try to achieve is to fix not only the outer beauty of individuals, but especially remind everybody how beautiful our body is at the inner side. And I think what we're experiencing during the aging process is that we have lots of wrinkles, we have lots of gray hair. It doesn't really matter. I'm not really focused on the outer side, but we should imagine that these wrinkles also occur at the inner side. And what we very often do with aesthetics, etc., we are just looking away that something also happens at the inner side. And I think this is so beautifully depicted here in this picture. And this is not going to work. Oh yeah, this is going to work. I would like to bring you on take you with me on the journey of building an ecosystem, what we are doing in Singapore at the moment. I'm working at the National University of Singapore, which I'm very glad that I do that, because I had decades in Europe, then I moved to Australia, and now I've found where we can really build an ecosystem for longevity. And why Singapore? Singapore has a problem, or they perceive it as a problem. The fertility rate in Singapore is very low. It's a 0.7. And people are super long living. It's the nation with the highest life expectancy on Earth, together with Switzerland and with Japan. However, people age not very gracefully. They have lots of age-related diseases. So if you just have 40 by 20 kilometers, which is Singapore, you have a very low fertility rate, you have a very high life expectancy. You really have to focus either to make babies, that's the one solution, or you have to really focus on health. And that's what the Singapore government is doing. And that enables us, Brian Kennedy with myself and lots of others who are working in Singapore, to change that ecosystem. So how is the ecosystem? When I'm talking about the ecosystem, what do I mean? So we have preclinical research led by Brian, with all the zebrafishes and all the Drosophila, etc., really learning how model organisms age. We bring that into the clinical group, the clinical science, doing lots of diagnostics, tests, lots of randomized controlled trials. And then once we think, okay, it's ready, we implement that into clinical practice. I will showcase you that we are opening the first longevity clinic in a publicly funded hospital. Next to that, I just opened a private clinic in February this year, also in Singapore. We are now going globally. And next to having clinics and also testing very academically what we do and what we can do with the research we did in the clinical and the preclinical group, we then do the next jump and going into the public health sector, because in the end, we really have to democratize whatever we are doing, and it should be reachable, in my view, for everybody. We are heavily involved in health districts, for example, a health district in Queenstown, which is a huge area, just 1/6 of Singapore, where all the inhabitants of that area is now being included in health research, and most of the research we are doing is longevity research or healthy longevity research. So I already told you we have 2 cores. It's a diagnostic core. How can we really measure hallmarks of aging? How can we measure, or what are the good clocks to use? We have tools to validate them in Asian cohorts. And then we have the core of interventions, where we really systematically focus on testing not only lifestyle interventions and combinations of lifestyle interventions, but also supplements and repurposed drugs. The newcomer on the block is the education. Since a couple of months, we now have the Academy for Healthy Longevity, where we really focus on educating not only the layman, because if you, for example, live in Queenstown and you are included in all these studies, you need to know what we are talking about. But especially we are focusing on the education, not only of students, but also mid-career researchers and mid-career professionals and of executives. So this is the ecosystem, and what we try to achieve is increasing the health span of Singaporeans, the health span by at least 3 years in the next decade. I'm not sure, this is in my contract. I signed the contract. I'm not sure what they're going to do if we don't achieve it, but let's see. This is Singapore. For me personally, it's very important to look globally because it's just a sort of living lab, Singapore, what we are trying to achieve. I think we really have to build the ecosystem much, much more globally. And I think this conference really showcases this, that the ecosystem is very narrow and we are very inclusive, which is great. But I think we have to strengthen it. The first strengthening activity we had between AFA, the Academy for Health and Lifespan Research, and the LBA, and the Health and Longevity Medicine Society, was just a couple of weeks ago when we all met in Manhattan and discussing, okay, how can we, as society leaders, how can we come together to build that ecosystem and enable much, much more research? How can we advocate for health and longevity around the globe? So that's happening at the moment. It's very exciting. And I think lots of us are also involved in discussions with the WHO and the United Nations. Myself, I'm an advisor of the Decade of Healthy Longevity, of Healthy Aging it's called. And I think that's very important, that we reach the global leaders to then influence also the governments around the world, that staying healthy is much, much more important than treating the diseases much, much later. And of course, I'm a doctor, I'm an internal medicine specialist. I want to see patients, I want to prescribe drugs in the end. So we really have to be the friends and around the table with the FDA and the EMA, etc. Very important partner for me, especially because of the Health and Longevity Medicine Society, are also the medical councils, because I cannot call myself officially a health and longevity medicine physician. I am one, but nobody knows what that is. You could say, everybody could say here, I'm a longevity medicine nurse or physician or allied health or whatever you want, but it's not trademarked yet. So we need to really build good collaborations with the medical councils, that next to being a surgeon and endocrinologist, we have that certification process in the end. So I would also like to dive a little bit into research, what my group is doing, and I will focus a little bit on diagnostics and then on a couple of examples of therapeutics, of trials we are doing before showcasing you what we do in the clinic space. This is just a very superficial summary of what we are doing at Chi Longevity. So we do biological phenotyping, clinical phenotyping, digital phenotyping. We are IT enabled, tech enabled. Every patient gets apps, so that's a diagnostic part, and then we have therapeutics. So in terms of where do we stand with clocks, we had beautiful presentations yesterday about especially epigenetic clocks. My group, and we published that paper a couple of weeks ago in Nature Medicine, we really liked to understand, can we already enable every GP, if a GP would like to use clocks, could we enable GPs with the data they already have from their patients, could we enable them to use clocks? So we said, okay, let's use the UK Biobank, let's build a body clock and lots of organ-specific clocks based on data every GP could do. So on the left-hand side, you see all the variables we had out of the UK Biobank. Think about muscle strength, think about leukocyte counts, etc. Very easy things. It's not rocket science. And we had that of more than 140,000 individuals, and we only took the healthy individuals, because what we wanted to do is not only have a first-generation clock where you predict mortality But we especially wanted to see if we can predict the incidence of age-related diseases, next, of course, to mortality. So we used the data on the left-hand side. I can showcase you here our body clock. The body clock entailed all these variables you just saw, and we were able to predict in healthy individuals who 6 years later, and then the second database was 12 years later, who had the incidence, the first incidence of a chronic disease, such as dementia, diabetes, COPD, etc. So what you showcase, or what we are showcasing here, is that individuals who were all healthy in the beginning, the ones 6 to 12 years later had COPD, were already at baseline using the body clock 4 years older. So it worked quite well. We also looked next to showcasing body clocks, individual clocks, because we wanted to know, do we see different rates of aging being clinically measured of different organ systems? So think about the blood pressure, think about pulse rate, think about an MMSE, etc., to measure cognition. So we had lots of these data, and we were building cardiac, pulmonary, muscle, immune clocks, etc. And what we were trying to understand here and showcased in this slide is, are these body clocks, are these organ clocks, can they predict the onset of the first disease? And you see that on the vertical axis. So for example, cancer, multiple sclerosis, depression, diabetes, etc. And the colors means green is already significant. If it's more red, it's even more significant, how good that clock is to predict the onset of the first disease. And what you can see is that the body clock, so the overarching number of variables in that clock, were much, much better in predicting all these age-related diseases. However, there, of course, if you see if an age-related disease in the heart was occurring, for example, myocardial infarction, that the heart clock was much, much better compared to a kidney clock. So, which means that there is a huge association within the body between all the organs, but in the end, the body clock performed much, much better. But what we also were very interested in, because in the end, I think, dear by my heart, I love biology, but I'm also a public health researcher. We really wanted to understand, is the rate of change and the rate of aging in organs, could we predict if one organ is decreasing much, much, much higher in their function, if another organ would be attracted also to have a higher change? So can we predict the rate of aging in a network of organ aging? And that's what's depicted here. What you see here are data, longitudinal data of 12 years, and what we did is looking at the rate of aging of one organ in the first 6 years, and then the second 6 years. And what we were able to show, for example, if the lung function goes down of an individual, it's very likely in the first 6 years, it's very likely that the cardiac function also goes down in the next 6 years of this individual. However, if the cardiac function goes down, there's not much association that also the lung function goes down in that individual, which means that we can now predict, based on what the function of organs is doing, which organ is going to deteriorate later in life. You also see another example that if somebody deteriorates in the cardiac function, I'm not talking about diseases, it's just decline in their function. It's very likely that also the renal function is going to decline. What does that mean? Why is that meaningful? So if a pulmonologist sees a lung function decline in the individual, maybe refer to a cardiologist because it's very likely. However, if the cardiologist sees a decline in heart function, do not per se refer to a pulmonologist. And I think using these kind of data and analysis, we could really make much, much more use, effectively use, of our resources in the healthcare system. So that's what I like, that we now can predict what's going to happen in an individual. So based on these analyses, we are doing now the VALID study, which is a validation of these algorithms in Asian cohorts in the health district in Queenstown, to then eventually, hopefully, next year, maybe the year after, we have implemented that into the GP systems in Singapore, and that's my aim, and Weilan is doing that. Let's move a little bit to the interventions. I will just talk a couple of slides about nicotinamide mononucleotide. I think everybody knows in the room that this is a supplement. NAD levels are going down, and there with supplementing the decline in NAD with NMN would make sense to restore the energy levels in a human body. And while restoring them, the entire idea is that you restore all the organ functions, because NAD levels might go down all organ systems. There's lots of debate about that. So we did a trial during the last year, giving NMN to individuals, 80 individuals at the age of 50, all were healthy, with the idea to restore and even restore their biological age. The primary outcome of this trial was NAD levels. And we had 4 arms, placebo, 300, 600, and 900 milligram of NMN. What we were able to show is that while giving NMN to these healthy individuals without chronic diseases for 60 days, is that we could increase the NAD level in the groups of 300, 600, and 900 milligram, which is great, with the highest level at 600 and 900 milligram. We were also able to show that the individuals who were in the 600 and 900 milligram group had improvement of their 6-minute walking test, which is a very important clinical marker, and also their SF36, which is a quality of life marker. So therewith, we concluded that this is a positive study. That's great. I, as a clinician, I'm an internal medicine specialist. I always want to know who is the responder and the non-responder. We just submitted analysis of the same trial to actually see if we can predict who is a responder and non-responder, and how much possibly NAD change you need to have a maximum improvement of the function. I will show you the data now. On the left-hand side, you see the NAD change. You see, yes, if you are taking not the placebo, you're very likely to increase your NAD levels. But what you also see is a huge SD, a huge variation how much NAD change somebody has, and that's given on the left-hand side. We then ask ourselves, okay, if there's such a huge variation, can we actually predict, based on the NAD levels, how much, and there's a dose relationship, if somebody improves more in the NAD level and there's a higher change, has that person then also a better outcome in the 6-minute walking test and then the SF36? And yes, this was the case, not only at 30 days, but also at 60 days, and that's given in the table. The next step we then did, okay, what is the minimal change of NAD levels you need to have a positive outcome? And the positive outcome means a clinically significant, of a clinically meaningful change in SF36 and the walking speed. And that's what you see in the right-hand side in that figure. Really determining if we just want 50% of the individuals to have a clinically meaningful change in these 2 outcome parameters, then you would need roughly a 50 nanomole per liter NAD change, which now means that we can quantify, and of course this is just based on one trial, and I would love to have other data to verify that from other trials, to see, okay, how much NAD change do we need? Can we titrate now NMN based on that change? And that's what we are doing in the Accurate study, where we use an AI model for customized NMN utilization enhancement individuals who are 40 to 60 and which are healthy. So it's a little bit like I am giving insulin to lots of my patients. I'm measuring the glucose level, and the glucose will guide me how much insulin I need. So we do the same for NMN and for NAD levels to titrate the use of supplements. The ones who were in Lisbon already know that we are looking at lots of supplement providers at the moment to see if individuals who buy supplements, and they are looking at the bottle, if the label claim is correct. And what do I mean with the label claim is really what's outside written on the bottle. We as customers, do we see the ingredients inside the bottle? And I will just show you the NMN results. We did the same for Ulyssin A, and we do it now for 2 other supplements. And what you can see here, we tested 10 products. You see the product name, so it's the first conference where I say what the product names are. You see the details, what NMN should be in there, and if it's a powder, a tablet, etc., what the label claim is, and then on the right-hand side, how much there really is inside. Of course, these are lots of data. I will just summarize it and make it easier. Here you see the products. Everything should be green or sort of a bluish. It should not be red. So what you see, we tested 10 products, and in 2 products we couldn't find NMN. Okay, so this was not a joke. It is what it is. Why did I do this? Or my group is heavily investing now in it, because I wanted to run trials. And I wanted to use supplements which are on the market. So first I need to know what's inside. And I was also a little bit, it's quite surprising, this result. But I can tell you it's not only for NMN, but also for other supplements we just tested. Okay, so if you take supplements, be careful what you take. We will publish these data. Then alpha-ketoglutarate. We do lots of trials at the moment with alpha-ketoglutarate. You already heard a beautiful lecture of Brian Kennedy in the morning about the mice who are living longer and are less frail. We are testing that also in humans. We do the ABLE study at the moment. It's the first trial where we are selecting our individuals, being 40 to 60, and healthy based on their biological age using the methylation data. We're using 4 clocks. We've taken the median because I do not know which is the best. Also, our primary outcome is the epigenetic, are these epigenetic clocks, the median of the four clocks, because we know that alpha-ketoglutarate is very likely interfering with the methylation state of individuals, hopefully to the better. So that's one trial running at the moment. We just got 2 big grants being now also able to test alpha-ketoglutarate perioperatively, one in colon cancer patients and one in cardiac surgical patients where we do that. All these trials running most of the time 6 to 9 months, because it takes 4 to 6 months that epigenetic clocks are really going to change into the hopefully right direction. But we will have the results next year. We also do lots of studies looking at nutritional factors. I think it would be beautiful to change our biological age just with what kind of food we are going to eat. So we just finished a systematic review where we're looking at nutritional compounds or nutrition itself with senolytic and xenomorphic activity. Here you see the result. This is how we work. We first do systematic reviews, really deep dive into databases which are available. We are looking at the literature, especially in animals, and then we are going into humans and clinical trials, and then saying, okay, we put our money into this compound or that compound, really based on these kind of approaches. But what you can see here, lots of animal data, not super successful yet, but not so much in humans at all if you look at nutrition and senolytic and xenomorphic potential. We are also very interested in brain health. Why brain health? Because the brain is so important for the entire aging process. Also there we are looking at compounds which could specifically be targets for pathways, for example, the GSK pathway, highly associated with the A-beta production. And here you see on the right-hand side ingredients which are now being selected very likely for the next trials in individuals with MCI or even with cognitive decline if we don't call it MCI. We same do that for the serotonin pathway. Of course, serotonin pathways are very important. Lots of animal data already. We did just a systematic review, again, of compounds who could manipulate that, which are either there in nutritional products or in supplements already to prevent cognitive declines, just being published, to have a read of that paper. Last thing to really discuss is repurposed drugs. We just heard about the TAME study of the dear colleague near Basilei. We are looking especially at nutrient sensing pathways to improve cognition, but overall health, and here you see all the studies available. It's already an old review of 2 years ago, but really showcasing, yes, there is lots of studies, but especially there are lots of studies which are negative, and especially in humans, which means that I'm not afraid of negative studies, but I think it will take some time until we really have great effect sizes by using repurposed drugs. And I think what we have to do is really choosing our outcomes wisely. We just embarked on another study with rapamycin, the longer study. Again, we did first a systematic review, which is shown on the left-hand side, what evidence we have at this moment in time. Green is positive studies, no effect is yellow, and partially positive is light green. And then the different organs which have been analyzed, which are associated with the aging process. What you see is, yes, despite of that there's a huge community already taking rapamycin, there is not much evidence coming out of human studies at all. And if there is positive results, then it's for the immune system and a little bit for the cardiac system. But there are also, for example, women's health or the reproductive system is not being tested at all, or the respiratory system. So we don't have the data yet really showcasing that rapamycin or other rapalogs work. That's the reason why we do the longer study, 6 milligram per week, and also in healthy individuals being 40 to 60. I'm very, very happy that at a certain time, even I, as a very conservative doctor, I jumped into the cold water and said, yes, we are opening clinics. It's there to go. We have diagnostics and we have interventions. And I'm very, very proud that Singapore is just such a beautiful place to open the first publicly funded longevity clinic. We are opening on August 31st, 2023, so just a couple of days left to open. Will be opened by the World Economic Forum, by a huge delegation with Klaus Schwab, who are coming to open this clinic. I'm very proud of that. And the aim of that clinic is really to delay the biological aging process and enhance the Healthspan, because, you know, it's in my contract, three biological years. I don't know how to do that in 10 years. But what we are going to do, every patient will be included, if they, of course, they want, in the study design. We include 400 participants in the first 12 months. Then we are scaling up to 3,000. And once the 3,000 per year are done, then we are opening the next clinics. That's what we are discussing with the Ministry of Health at the moment. There's a huge component of cost effectiveness and implementation science, because if we reach the first 3,000 of clients in the first year, we have to be ready to just seed all the plans and to seed the new longevity clinics. So therefore, implementation science is very, very important. And we are working closely with Shiva and with Mayo Clinic and with the HLMS to do this. We have diagnostics, outcomes, the multidisciplinary team, personalized medicine we are going to apply, and there's a beautiful team who are working 24/7 at the moment to get this going. And once again, it's not just biological age clock as an outcome, but also, for example, team satisfaction. Who wants to work in longevity clinics is super important, because we don't have the resources yet of lots of doctors and nurses who want to work with us. So there was team satisfaction, patient satisfaction, cost effectiveness is very important. I really learned while opening Chi Longevity, which is a private clinic, a high-end clinic, which is in Singapore. I think we are applying the same journey in that clinic as in the public clinic. We have 6 months of interventions. We are testing, retesting. We are following our clients rigorously, because they are being watched with all the data collection of the digital phenotypic approaches. So everybody is being watched carefully for 6 months to really change the needle in their biological age in terms of lifestyle interventions, supplements, repurposed drugs, etc., etc. Just a couple of showcases how that looks like. So we really try to bring the evidence, the newest evidence, into the clinic. Everything is evidence-based. We do lots of organ testing. It's given on the left-hand side, and we are saying what to focus on, what not to focus on for that client, that it's feasible in that 6 months journey. But in the end, and then really, I'm already 0 here, so I don't think it's, I'm not sure what time it is. But I would like to showcase you two other things. And another one is the product New. I'm not sure who heard about New, but it's a fantastic new company I'm involved in since half a year now as the Chief Medical Officer, to really democratize and bring the newest technology to clients without per se going into longevity clinic. So making sense out of blood data, genome data, microbiome data, etc., etc. So what we really want to achieve, and Annie and Marco are in the room, I think they really networked hugely in the last two days. Please have a look and talk to them. What we really want is optimization of the Healthspan and really making health a lifelong journey by always telling, get to know you. I'm not sure how many of you know that your genome and your microbiome. I fully disagree with Neil what he just said, that the microbiome is not important. I will call him when I'm on the flight, I think. He really needs to change. But getting to know you and then change yourself is super important. And how do we do that? Is really analyzing it and applying machine learning and making digital twins, then giving recommendations and giving the solutions. And that, of course, should be a huge cycle. How does it look like? This is my data. Neil also showed his data. My biological age a year ago was 41, but especially with lots of focus on the microbiome. Don't look at my diversity, it's really, really bad. I had just, at that point in time, antibiotics before that. But really showcasing that, yes, getting to know you, you know what to do. And then you can choose yourself if you're going to change, yes or no. Really the last thing is we have to build societies, bring people together, which especially also focus not only on certification, etc., but on education. So hopefully you know that the Health Longevity Medicine Society exists. We founded it together with Eva Bishop is there a year ago. And we are working very, very hard to bring healthcare professionals together. Plus, look at hlms.co, become a member. Our mission is education, bring the standards into our clinical practice, forming the research agenda for clinicians who are interested. And our vision is that in the end, I can call myself a health longevity medicine physician because we are recognized in all the countries. So that's very important. We are really focusing on evidence. We are writing guidelines at this moment in time. And very important is, yes, animal research is important, but we are not mice. So we have to translate it into clinical practice and into humans. We already wrote papers, white papers, about what is longevity medicine, how do you set up a health longevity medicine clinic in publicly funded hospitals. And we are working on these guidelines, which are given there. At the moment, we are writing one about the evidence of stem cell therapies, but we are working then on NAD precursors, etc., etc., for the audience, our healthcare professionals to guide health longevity clinics into the, I'm not sure if it's the right direction, but in the evidence-based direction. And then the academy, yes, I really have to stop, yes. We founded the Academy for Health Longevity. That was our first course incubator. We had 10 nights with hugely selected individuals on campus. The program was from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And then they were able to do their homework. So they really did not sleep. And it was hugely successful. We got a 5 out of 5, which is great in terms of the rating. And I think this is the way how we grow the longevity space, to have incubators, to have crash courses, etc., and to be fantastic. Last thing, in February, you should come to Singapore because we have a conference about health and longevity and supplements. We first have an education section, and then we have our supplement conference. Thank you, Aubrey.
Okay, yeah.